Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Satish. In this video, we look at why not to build rental buildings without doing this. Everyone keeps saying buy a site or a place, construct a building and then rent it out. You will continue to collect rent and counting money. Well, I just did that. I own 2 buildings, but it is not as rosy as it sounds or as profitable as it sounds. We'll look at that, why it happens in this video. That's what we'll cover in this video. We'll look at the metrics, we'll look at the numbers and why it doesn't really cut it. That's what we will look at in this video. Let's get started. The common advice, right? When you talk to somebody, you will say, oh, why don't you, when you're working, why don't you actually consider buying a site and then, construct a building and then you can physically see the property and then every month you will get an, income and that will actually, your life is settled. So this is a typical advice and in fact, I got the same advice, right? And I did the same. And I own 2 rental buildings. So I'm talking this based on my experience. While it sounds very lucrative and rosy, but the numbers do not really add up. I'll tell you why. What nobody talks about is the rental yield. Rental yield is an important aspect when you're trying to construct a building. Again, we are not talking about the emotional aspect about building a house or owning a house or your social status about having 1 or 2 houses, about that. But we are purely looking in this video more from a number standpoint and why I believe, the numbers do not add up. So firstly, let's look at what is rental yield, right? So rental yield is essentially the amount of return you get when you actually invest in constructing a house. For example, let's say the piece of land costs you 50 lakhs and you construct a house on top of that using another 50 lakhs. That's 1 crore you're invested on that particular venture or your house. Now imagine you get about 12 lakhs per year. That is your rental yield is at 12%. But if you get 6 lakhs per year, your rental yield is 6%. So this is what it is, right? So essentially it is the amount of return you get for the money you invested. This is what is rental yield. So let's look at some real numbers. If you look at, as per 99 acres, if you look at the 2024 data, the rental yield ranged anywhere from about 2.7% to 3.9%. In places like Delhi, it was about 2.7 to 2.8%. In Kolkata, it was about 3.9%. Again, in some cities, there may be, here in the plus or minus, but pan-India, this is about 2.7 to 3.9%, in some cities, you may see it maybe 4 or 5%, but that's actually very, again, there are always outliers. Somebody can pick up a number and say, that's not right? But there are always outliers. But on a macro level, right, these are the real numbers based on statistics from 99 acres from 2024 year. Now, why these numbers are important is because you always need to consider something called inflation, right? Inflation is nothing but, the amount of purchasing power that, your rupee has today. So in India, if you look at the inflation, as per RBI, it is about in 2023, it's about 5.6%, right? So if you just look at that numbers perspective, if your money doesn't grow by 5.6%, then you are literally losing money. A simple example is, imagine you go to a restaurant and buy a dosa for 100 rupees today. Tomorrow or next year, the dosa will cost you 105 point something or 106 rupees, to be precise, right? And year after that, it will be 6% increase on top of that. So that is how the prices are increasing based on inflation. Now, if the money you hold is actually going to become 105 instead of, or 103 instead of 106, you can't really buy those, essentially you're short of 2 rupees there, right? So that's the fundamental thing you need to think about when you're investing money, right? How you're going to hedge for inflation and actually your income that you make from, your rental properties should at least beat the inflation. So that's the way, fundamentally you need to look at when you're investing, your money. If it doesn't beat the inflation, then it does not cut it. The other thing that everybody talks about is the property valuation myth, right? Again, you bought a property for, 50 lakhs now. In 10 years, that will become, 1.5 crore or 2 crores, right? So that is the myth that everybody talks about. Again, there are outliers with the growth in some cities. You see it's astronomically gone up. But in general, as per RBI, right, the RBI House Price Index, it ranges anywhere from 0.6% to 8.5%. So in Kochi, it was about 0.6%, and in Chennai, it was about 8.4%. So that is how much your properties actually have gone up. But if you look at a national average, it's probably around 5%, right? So Look at it. You are the asset you invested in is actually growing. I mean, the piece of land is only growing about 5%. And again, after a while, after a few years, your asset, your house constructed is actually going to depreciate because of the construction cost and maintenance. So if you look at all these numbers and put together, right, the kind of growth you get on the asset as a land and all of this, it kind of is hardly beating inflation. That is what it is. If you acquire the land for a very, very cheaper price, then you may be able to add up the numbers if the rental yields are high. But you buying a piece of land and then constructing in today's environment, you need to really look at these numbers when you take the next decision. So why does all of these things happen, right? The reason this is not a profitable venture in general is the hidden costs after you construct the house. What you do not really factor in is the yearly taxes you need to pay, the borewell costs, the lift maintenance charges. In fact, I paid about 75,000 or 1 lakh just for the lift maintenance. It's pretty expensive if you look at a comprehensive plan. So that every month that's an expense that adds up. You have maids who have to maintain the property. You have to paint the house, the house every few years. So that actually is a significant number that adds up. Again, there are something's broken. You need to replace all of that. So all of these actually really factor in, and these are hidden costs. You need to really take this to the next level to see what these are. And if you add all of these up, the net return, it doesn't really cross 5%. In my case as well, right? If you look at it, our return is barely touching 5% or 4.5%, which is actually not in fact is not even beating inflation. Of course, I'm happy that I own a property and I have two houses, but numbers wise it doesn't make sense. But why do everybody construct houses? Because it's a cultural thing. Every day at my breakfast table, I'd had a conversation with my father, and my father says, I think you need to buy another piece of land and construct another one, or buy another piece of land, or buy an apartment and rent it out, or again, because fundamentally most of the people that are around me are building a house and building an apartment on it, or a piece of apartment or a bunch of apartments and collecting rent is a very traditional way of saving your money. But when it comes to really looking at metrics, right, so it doesn't really add up. So the conclusion is that before you actually do any of these things, you need to look at hard numbers that make sense. Again, owning one just for the emotional sake or the society status maybe is good, but what happens when you keep going the same route, it doesn't really add up. Imagine you buy a house by taking 9%, the current housing rate is about 9%, and you're getting a return of 5%. There is a 4% deficit here, which is hardly going to be balanced by the increase in the property value, and all these costs add up. So net on net, it may not be the most profitable venture. So you need to really look at the capital allocation and then make a call. So all in all, think about it twice when you are planning to do an investment, or building a house out of that. Look at the numbers, and maybe if you are emotionally tied to something, just build something for society's sake, or your sake, or your parents' sake, right? Just like I did, and then consider looking at other investments. So that's what we'll cover in the upcoming videos, right? On my channel, right? How can you invest? How can you actually diversify portfolio? How can you have various investments so that your overall return is actually beating inflation, right? So that is the idea. So again, thank you for watching. Do subscribe for getting regular updates.